At Mobile World Congress, you meet the most interesting startup. And I've Reinhard Smith from Closing the Loop, and he's working in Africa to get old phones recycled. Old phones in Africa recycled? How does that work? Okay, Reinhard, you have a new company called Closing the Loop. What does it do?
Closing the Loop recycles mobile phones from Africa, and we make it possible for companies to get their old phones reused in Africa and take them back into the old phones back into the market.
Okay, first, in Africa, old phones. Old phones which are not being used in Africa. They must be really, really, really old.
That's true, yes. The phones we get back from Africa, if something cannot be fixed there, and it's not only Africa, any emerging market, but if they cannot be used there, they are dead. They are definitely just waste.
Yeah, and aren't they just thrown away in a big trash can?
Unfortunately, yes, they are being burnt in waste dumps, being burnt in the environment, and that's bad. There's valuable resources inside, gold, silver, copper. We bring them back to get that back into the economy.
You find old phones in Africa, you gather them, you put them in containers, and you bring them back to a recycle company in Europe?
Yes, correct. We work with Sims Recycling Solutions. We have partners in Africa. I don't have to find them myself, luckily, but we have many partners, and these partners find the phones, and then they ship it with us in containers to Europe, and then we have a certified recycling facility in Belgium, and they're the ones who actually smelt the phones and turn them into the raw materials that we need.
And all that incredibly complex logistical operation can be paid out of the old materials coming from old phones?
Yes, it can in a way be paid by that. You need a lot of volume to do that, so that's why we're growing and getting more and more phones back. Yeah. But it's even better if we as companies in Europe can take our responsibility in using phones and help pay for that.
Okay, let's see the other brand you had that is called Rethink. So that's a combination of taking phones from Europe and putting them refurnished back in Africa. How does that work? What is Rethink?
Well, Rethink is a new brand launched right here at Mobile World Congress yesterday, and it's a brand where we as a startup, Closing the Loop, are working with a 100-year-old recycling company, Sims Recycling, and we make it possible for companies to get their phones reused in emerging markets, which happens already. There's many companies that do it, but we are the first people who also take the responsibility for what happens to these phones when they die in Africa, and we take them back here.
Okay. Getting phones from Europe and selling them in Africa doesn't sound like a big deal. That I can imagine that happens. But the old phones back to Europe recycled, that is, how did you come to make that kind of a startup?
The idea was that we were already trying to sell phones in Africa, and we saw that there's a big market for that, and then we realized that they don't have recycling options there. So we actually did it because of the environmental reasons. We realized that if they're not going to do it themselves locally, then we should take care of that. It's our phones that end up there in the first place. Yeah. So we just decided to take them back.
And you were grown up in Africa?
Yes, I'm from South Africa, and I grew up in Ghana, where actually one of the biggest electronic waste dumps in the world are.
Yeah, that's how we always hear about Africa. Correct. So how many people in the startup?
We are 4 people in the company.
When did you start?
About 4 years ago we started with pilots in Africa, and now we've grown to 11 countries in Africa.
Okay, where can I find more information about you?
You can find more information on closingtheloop.eu.
Good luck, good job.